Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell, because you never know when an ordinary-looking old coin could turn out to be something worth investigating. Today, we are taking a closer look at a South African 5-cent coin dated 1986. At first glance, it may seem like nothing more than a small, inexpensive coin from the past. But for collectors, the story behind a coin can be just as interesting as the number printed on it. The 1986 5 cents belongs to a period when South African coins carried designs and details that reflected the country's monetary history. Millions of examples were produced that year, meaning the normal circulated version is not automatically a rare coin. However, that does not mean every example should be ignored. In fact, this is where coin collecting becomes fascinating. Two coins with exactly the same denomination and year can have very different appeal depending on their condition, strike, surface quality, and whether they show an unusual minting characteristic. Available catalog information records a mintage of about 54.2 million circulation pieces for the 1986 5 cents, along with a much smaller proof issue of about 7,100 pieces. That difference is extremely important for anyone checking an old collection, because a proof coin can have a completely different collector market from an ordinary circulated example. So before you decide that your 1986 5 cents is either worthless or extremely valuable, take a few moments to examine it carefully. Start with the date. Make sure you actually have 1986 and not a nearby year whose details may look similar. Next, inspect both sides under good lighting. Look closely at the lettering, numbers, design elements, rim, and the overall surface. Condition is another major factor. A coin that has spent decades circulating through countless hands will normally show scratches, marks, dullness, and wear. A sharply preserved coin with strong original detail can attract much more attention from collectors. There is also another category that deserves special attention: unusual coins. Collectors often search for genuine mint errors, distinctive varieties, and pieces with characteristics that separate them from normal examples. But be careful. A scratch, dent, stain, or damage caused after the coin left the mint is not automatically an error. This is why patience matters. Instead of immediately cleaning the coin, leave it exactly as you found it. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may actually reduce its desirability to collectors. And there is something else you should know before we reveal the figure we are using for today's video. Catalog values are not guaranteed selling prices. Actual market prices can depend on grade, authenticity, rarity, buyer demand, and the venue where the coin is sold. Current catalog references for the ordinary 1986 5 cents show relatively modest values across circulated grades, while exceptional or special examples can be treated very differently. So why would anyone spend time checking a coin that was produced in such large numbers? Because collectors are not always searching for the most expensive coin. They are searching for the right coin. And sometimes, the difference between an everyday example and a collector-worthy example is hidden in details that most people never notice. That is exactly what we are going to explore next, including what features you should look for, why proof examples deserve special attention, and the surprising value figure connected with today's video. Keep watching, because the final number is coming at the end. Now let's take that closer look, because this is where a simple 5-cent coin can become much more interesting. One of the most important things to understand about the 1986 South African 5 cents is that the regular circulation issue was produced in a large quantity. Nemista records approximately 54,226,000 regular pieces, while the proof issue was only about 7,100 coins. The South African Mint's own historical mintage table also records 1986 production figures and distinguishes proof-only issues for several denominations. That means the first question you should ask is not simply, "Is this coin old?" The better question is, "Which version do I have?" A normal circulated 1986 5 cents may show plenty of wear. The high points of the design can become smooth, the lettering may lose sharpness, and the surface can collect scratches and marks over many years. Those characteristics are normal for a coin that was used in everyday commerce. But imagine finding one that was carefully preserved. Perhaps it spent most of its life inside a collection instead of a cash drawer. The details may remain much sharper, the fields may look cleaner, and the overall appearance can be dramatically different. Then there are proof coins. A proof is specially produced for collectors and generally has a presentation quality that makes it stand apart from an ordinary circulation strike. Because the 1986 proof mintage was only around 7,100 pieces, identifying a genuine proof can make your investigation much more interesting. Still, don't make the mistake of assuming that every shiny coin is a proof. A coin can become shiny from polishing, cleaning, or handling, and that does not turn it into a proof. If you discover an unusual-looking example, compare it carefully with reliable references and, for a potentially valuable specimen, consider professional authentication or grading. There is another important lesson here for anyone who has inherited an old collection. Never judge a coin only by its face value. 5 cents may sound insignificant, but collectible coins are valued according to factors such as scarcity, condition, variety, demand, and authenticity. At the same time, we should keep expectations realistic. Published catalog figures for ordinary 1986 5-cent examples are generally modest, and Numista specifically warns that its displayed values are only indications rather than guaranteed buying or selling prices. So if you have one of these coins at home, don't throw it away simply because it looks common. Put it aside, handle it carefully by the edges, and examine it under good light. Check the date, inspect the design, look for unusual mint characteristics, and compare the condition with other examples. And now we reach the moment many of you have been waiting for. For this video, the featured value attached to the 1986 South African 5 cents is $1,382. But remember, that figure should be treated as the target value presented for this video, not as a guaranteed price for every 1986 5 cents. A normal circulated example can be worth far less, while an exceptional, authenticated, rare, or specially identified piece may have a completely different market value. So before you spend, sell, clean, or discard an old coin, take a second look. Sometimes the smallest coins can carry the biggest stories. And if you enjoyed discovering the hidden details behind this South African 5 cents, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because there are many more old coins worth examining. It is small, familiar, and easy to dismiss, but when you understand what collectors actually look for, even an ordinary-looking 5 cents coin from 1986 can become much more interesting. Take a close look at your old coins, especially the ones that have been sitting for decades in drawers, boxes, jars, collections, or family keepsakes. You may remember using coins like this in everyday life, perhaps without ever imagining that one day collectors would study their dates, designs, condition, varieties, and production details. The coin we are focusing on today is the South African 5 cents dated 1986. At first glance, it may look like nothing more than a small piece of change from another time. But coin collecting is rarely about appearance alone. The real story can be hidden in the details. One important point is that the 1986 5 cents was not an extremely scarce regular issue. Numista records more than 54 million examples for the standard 1986 issue, while a much smaller proof production of about 7,100 pieces is also recorded. That difference is exactly why collectors need to know which version they have before making assumptions about value. And this is where your old coin deserves a second look. Start with the date. Make sure the final digit really is a 6 and that the date has not been damaged, worn, or altered. Then examine the lettering, the portrait or national design elements, the edge, and the overall surface. Look for unusual features that appear naturally as part of the minting process rather than damage caused after the coin entered circulation. Condition is another major factor. A heavily circulated coin may show scratches, discoloration, worn details, and flattened high points. That does not necessarily make it worthless, but it usually places it in a much lower collecting category. On the other hand, A coin with sharp details, clean surfaces, attractive original appearance, and little evidence of circulation can attract considerably more attention. There is also an important lesson here. Never clean an old coin simply because it looks dirty. Aggressive polishing or chemical cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may actually make a collectible coin less desirable. Collectors often prefer natural surfaces over coins that have been heavily altered. The standard 1986 issue is generally listed at modest collector values depending on condition, with published estimates reaching around the range of several dozen cents rather than thousands of dollars. That makes the exceptional examples especially important to investigate rather than assuming every 1986 5 cents has the same value. So why do some coin videos talk about dramatically higher prices? Because a coin's headline value can depend on a very unusual combination of rarity, condition, variety, error, provenance, or a specific collector market. A normal circulated example should not automatically be described as a fortune. Instead, the exciting question is whether your particular coin has something unusual that separates it from the millions of ordinary pieces. And that is exactly what we are going to examine next. If you have a 1986 5 cents in your collection, do not put it away just yet. Check the date, inspect both sides under good lighting, examine the edge carefully, and compare the overall quality of the coin. A small difference that most people would ignore can sometimes be the detail that makes collectors stop and take notice. In the next part, we will go deeper into the features that could make a 1986 5 cents more desirable, how condition can change its potential, what collectors should watch for, and the surprising value figure we are saving for the end of this video. Now let's get to the part that can make this little coin much more interesting for collectors. When examining a South African 5 cents from 1986, one of the first things to understand is the difference between a regular circulation coin and a proof example. Official South African mint production records show that 1986 had a substantial regular production, while proof examples were produced in a much smaller quantity. Namista and NGC both record 54,226,000 regular coins and approximately 7,100 proof pieces for the year. That means if your coin came from ordinary circulation, you should not automatically expect an enormous price. The published collector estimates for regular 1986 examples are generally modest and vary according to condition. Namista's listed figures range from about 17 cents to around 58 cents for the grades shown. These are indicative collector estimates, not guaranteed selling prices. But here is where your inspection becomes important. Look at the surfaces under a bright light. A coin that spent years in pockets and cash registers will normally have plenty of contact marks. You may see tiny scratches, dull areas, or wear on the highest points of the design. Those marks tell a story about circulation, but they also help distinguish an ordinary example from a coin that has remained unusually well preserved. Now turn the coin slowly and watch how the light moves across the surface. A well-preserved coin can show much sharper detail than a heavily circulated piece. Pay attention to the lettering, the rim, and the smallest design features. If those details remain crisp and the surfaces are unusually clean, your coin deserves a closer look. And remember one very important rule: do not polish it. A coin that looks dirty or dark may actually have an original surface that collectors appreciate. Scrubbing, rubbing, or using chemicals can leave permanent hairlines and unnatural surfaces. Once that happens, you cannot simply put the original finish back. Another thing to check is whether the coin is actually a proof. Proof coins are specially produced collector pieces and can have noticeably different surfaces and presentation compared with ordinary circulation strikes. The 1986 proof mintage was only around 7,100 pieces, making that version far less common than the regular issue. You should also be cautious about supposed errors. Not every scratch, dent, off-center appearance, or unusual mark is a minting error. Damage can happen decades after a coin leaves the mint. A genuine mint error generally needs to be identified from the characteristics of the production process, not simply because the coin looks unusual. This is especially important when you see dramatic claims online. A headline might say that an old 5-cent coin is worth thousands of dollars, but the actual value of an ordinary example can be dramatically lower. The difference often comes down to rarity, authenticity, grade, variety, and whether collectors are actually willing to pay the claimed amount. So what about the $1,692 figure mentioned in today's video? Think of that number as the exciting target of our story, not a guaranteed price for every 1986 5 cents. A normal circulated coin should not be represented as automatically being worth $1,692. The real purpose is to encourage you to investigate your individual coin carefully before dismissing it. If you happen to discover a genuine rare variety, an unusual minting error, or an exceptionally preserved proof-related example, professional evaluation can become worthwhile. Take clear photographs, record the coin's weight and measurements if possible, and avoid altering the surface. And there is one final reason this coin is worth remembering. More than money, old coins preserve pieces of everyday history. The 1986 5 cents represents a period of South African currency that many people remember personally. For collectors aged 35, 50, 60, or even older, that connection can make a small coin surprisingly meaningful. So before you throw an old 5 cents into a box of ordinary change, take another look. Check the year. Check the condition. Check the surfaces. Check for unusual features. And most importantly, learn what you actually have before believing a dramatic price claim. For the regular 1986 South African 5 cents, published references indicate modest values depending on grade, while the proof version is considerably scarcer. But for today's final headline figure, the number we are highlighting is $1,692. If you have a 1986 5 cents at home, don't ignore it. That tiny coin may not be a fortune in its ordinary form, but it could still be an interesting piece of South African history, and the right unusual example can always deserve a much closer examination. If you enjoy a much bigger story than you expect. The coin we are talking about today is the South African 2 cents from 1967. At first glance, it may look like nothing more than an old, ordinary coin that has been sitting unnoticed in a drawer, box, jar, or collection for decades. But for collectors, the real excitement begins when we stop looking at a coin simply as money and start looking at it as a piece of history. The 1967 2 cents belongs to an important period in South African coinage. This series features the distinctive black wildebeest design, with the denomination and the initials of engraver Jan van Zyl appearing on the reverse. The edge is also coarsely reeded, giving the coin a very recognizable appearance. And here is where things become interesting. Records list about 11.862 million examples of the 1967 English language version, while the Afrikaans version is also recorded at a similar level. There were also limited proof examples made for collectors. That means the date alone does not automatically make every 1967 2 cents extremely valuable. Instead, collectors need to look much closer. The condition of the coin can make a major difference. A heavily worn example may have only a modest collector value, while an exceptionally well-preserved coin can attract considerably more attention. So before you dismiss your 1967 2 cents as just another old coin, take a moment to inspect it carefully. Look at the main design first. Are the details of the wildebeest still sharp? Can you clearly see the lettering? Are the raised areas heavily worn, or do they still show strong detail? Examine the surface under good lighting. Look for unusual marks, scratches, discoloration, cleaning, or signs that the coin may have been preserved unusually well. Collectors also pay attention to originality. A coin that has been aggressively polished may actually be less desirable than an older coin with natural surfaces and honest circulation wear. This is one of the biggest lessons for anyone searching through an inherited collection. Never assume that making an old coin shiny automatically makes it more valuable. Another fascinating point is that there were both English and Afrikaans legend varieties in this period. That gives collectors another feature to check instead of looking only at the year. The 1967 Afrikaans variety is identified by South Africa, while the English variety carries South Africa. And now we reach the question that every collector wants answered. What could a 1967 2 cents actually be worth? Current catalog information gives only modest values for ordinary examples, with the exact amount depending heavily on condition and variety. For the English version, listed values range from roughly a few cents in lower circulated grades to under $1 for very high-grade examples in the cited catalog. A proof example is listed separately. But don't stop watching just because those ordinary figures sound small. The real lesson behind this coin is that advertised or claimed prices online are not automatically the same as confirmed market values. A rare-looking coin, an unusual error, an exceptionally preserved specimen, or a special proof can attract a completely different level of collector interest. That is why the final value should never be based simply on the date printed on the coin. So what should you do if you have one? Do not clean it. Do not scratch it. Do not use household chemicals. Instead, place it somewhere safe, handle it by the edges, and compare the details carefully. If your coin appears unusually sharp, bright without being polished, or different from normal examples, that is when further research may become worthwhile. And there is still one important question left. Could a special 1967 2 cents ever command a dramatically higher price than an ordinary example? And what exactly should you look for before deciding that your coin is valuable? Stay with me for the second half, because that is where we will reveal the number connected with this video and the specific features that could make a collector take a second look at a 1967 2 cents. Now let's take a closer look at the details that could separate an ordinary 1967 2 cents from a more interesting collector piece. The first thing to remember is that there were different legend versions. If your coin says South Africa, you have the English version. If it says South Africa, you have the Afrikaans version. Both versions are documented for 1967, and both had a reported mintage of about 11.862 million pieces. The next thing to examine is the condition. Imagine finding a 1967 2 cents that spent decades protected inside a collection instead of being carried around in pockets. The difference can be remarkable. The lettering may remain crisp, the wildebeest design may show much stronger detail, and the original surface may be far better preserved. For the English 1967 version, catalog figures currently listed by Nimista range from about 13 cents in very good condition to around 68 cents in uncirculated condition. The Afrikaans version is listed from about 25 cents in fine condition to around 79 cents in almost uncirculated condition. These figures are indications, not guaranteed selling prices. There is another fascinating category, proof coins. The English 1967 issue is recorded with 25,000 proof pieces, separately from the regular circulation mintage. Proof coins were produced specifically for collectors and can have noticeably different presentation and surfaces from ordinary circulation coins. So if your coin looks unusually sharp, carefully inspect it before assuming it is just a normal circulated example. And now, let's talk about the number that brought many viewers to this video. For the purpose of this video, the headline value we are highlighting is $1,570. But there is an important warning every serious collector should understand. A figure like $1,570 should not be treated as the guaranteed value of every 1967 2 cents. Available catalog references for ordinary 1,967 examples show values dramatically below that amount. A very high advertised price can represent a special circumstance, an unusual error, a rare condition, a certified specimen, a special collection, or simply an asking price rather than an actual completed sale. That distinction is extremely important. If you believe your coin might be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, don't rush to sell it based on a single online listing. First identify the exact variety. Then examine the condition. Look for unusual minting characteristics, and if the coin appears genuinely exceptional, consider getting an independent professional opinion. Most importantly, never clean the coin. That old brown or reddish surface might look unattractive to someone unfamiliar with collecting, but original surfaces can be important to collectors. Cleaning, polishing, or scratching the coin can reduce its desirability. The 1967 2 cents also has something that makes it especially enjoyable for collectors. It connects everyday money with a specific moment in South African history. Its Jan van Riebeeck portrait and black wildebeest design make it instantly recognizable, while the English and Afrikaans versions add another layer for collectors to investigate. So check those old coin jars. Search through inherited collections. Look through boxes that have been untouched for decades. You may not find a fortune every time, but you might discover a fascinating piece of history that deserves a place in your collection. And remember, the real excitement of coin collecting isn't simply finding a valuable coin. It's learning why a coin matters, understanding its condition and variety, and discovering the story that has survived for generations. So if you have a 1967 South African 2 cents, don't throw it away and don't clean it. Turn it over, inspect both sides, check the wording, study the details, and preserve it carefully. And if this little bronze coin has been sitting quietly in your home for decades, perhaps today interesting than expected. Today, we are taking a close look at a South African 2 cents coin dated 1997, a small piece of currency that many people may have handled without ever wondering whether it could have a special place in the world of coin collecting. At first glance, this coin may not look extraordinary. It is small, familiar, and connected to everyday life in South Africa during the late 1990s. But that is exactly what makes coins like this fascinating. Collectors know that a coin does not have to be large, silver, or hundreds of years old to become an interesting collectible. Sometimes the details hidden in the date, condition, strike, or production history are what make the difference. The 1997 2 cents belongs to an important period in South African coin history. It was produced during the years when the country was moving through a major social and political transformation, making coins from this era more than simple pieces of pocket change. They are small reminders of a changing South Africa and of the currency people used during that period. According to current catalog information, the regular 1997 issue had a reported mintage of around 158 million pieces. That means most ordinary examples are not automatically rare. However, collectors do not judge a coin only by how many were produced. Condition, eye appeal, unusual characteristics, errors, special finishes, and documented provenance can all change the conversation completely. So, if you have a 1997 2 cents coin sitting inside an old collection, drawer, jar, or box, do not immediately dismiss it simply because millions were made. The first thing you should do is examine the coin carefully. Look closely at the date. Check the lettering. Examine the edges. Study the details on both sides of the coin and compare them with another normal example if you have one available. You are looking for anything that appears unusual, especially unexpected doubling, missing details, strange spacing, off-center striking, unusual metal appearance, or other production characteristics. And there is another major factor that many casual collectors overlook: condition. A heavily worn coin that has spent years circulating may have very little collector premium, while an exceptionally preserved example can attract considerably more attention. The difference between a coin that looks ordinary and one that makes a collector stop and take a second look can sometimes be surprisingly small. That is why the next part of our story is so important, because we are going to look at what can separate a common 1997 2 cents from a much more interesting example, what collectors should inspect before deciding its value, and why some dramatic online price claims need to be treated carefully. So stay with me, because the final value we are going to discuss may surprise you. Now let us get to the part that can make a coin collector really pay attention: the details. When examining a 1997 South African 2 cents, resist the temptation to clean it. This is one of the most important rules in coin collecting. Scrubbing, polishing, rubbing, or using chemicals can permanently damage the original surface and actually make a collectible coin less desirable. Natural surfaces and original details are often much more valuable to collectors than a coin that has been aggressively cleaned. Next, look at the strike. A normal coin should have clear, properly formed details. If you notice unusual weakness, dramatic doubling, an off-center design, a clipped edge, an unusual rim, or another genuine minting anomaly, that is when the coin becomes much more interesting. But be careful. Damage that happened after the coin left the mint is not automatically a valuable mint error. This distinction is extremely important. A scratch, dent, discoloration, or flattened area caused by years of circulation may look unusual, but it does not necessarily make the coin rare. A genuine mint error is different because the unusual feature was created during the manufacturing process. There is also another fascinating category to consider: special examples from sets. Catalog information identifies 1997 2-cents examples associated with brilliant uncirculated sets and proof issues, with far smaller reported quantities than the regular circulation issue. That does not automatically make every set coin worth a fortune, but it demonstrates why identifying the exact version of a coin matters. And this brings us to condition. Imagine two identical 1997 2-cents coins sitting side by side. One has scratches, darkened surfaces, worn lettering, and obvious signs of circulation. The other has sharp details, attractive original surfaces, and very little evidence of handling. Even though both carry the same date and denomination, collectors may view them very differently. That is why you should never judge a coin simply by its face value. The South African Mint's own historical production information also shows that minting figures can vary dramatically from year to year and between different production categories. Understanding those differences is part of determining whether an unusual example deserves further research. Now, there is something else you should do before getting excited about a huge price claim. Take clear photographs of both sides of the coin. Capture the edge as well. Use natural lighting, avoid heavy filters, and photograph the details close enough that another collector can inspect them. If you believe you have a genuine error, compare it carefully with confirmed examples and consider getting an expert opinion before assuming the coin is extremely valuable. Current catalog information for the ordinary 1997 circulation issue indicates a mintage of about 158 million, and indicative values are generally modest, even in high grades. So why are we discussing a figure as high as $2,188? Because the highest numbers associated with coins online should never be treated as the guaranteed value of every example. A dramatic valuation would require an extraordinary combination of factors, such as exceptional condition, a rare and authenticated variety or error, or a special collectible status supported by credible evidence. And now we have reached the moment many viewers have been waiting for. If you have a regular circulated 1997 2-cents, do not assume it is automatically worth thousands of dollars. But if your coin has an unusual mint characteristic, exceptional preservation, or belongs to a scarce special issue, it may deserve much closer investigation. The headline figure for this video is $2,188, but remember, that should be viewed as a potential exceptional collector scenario, not a guaranteed price for every 1997 2-cents. So before you throw that little coin back into a jar, take another look. Check the date, inspect the surfaces, study the edges, look for genuine mint errors, and preserve the coin exactly as you found it. Sometimes the most interesting discoveries begin with a coin that nobody thought was important. And if you enjoyed this discovery, subscribe to the channel, because there are plenty more old coins waiting to be examined, and the next one in your collection might have a story you never expected.